It was barely past dawn in Washington, D.C., but the air already felt heavier than usual. As sunlight struggled to pierce the thick gray sky, the city moved with an anxious rhythm, as if everyone sensed something historic was about to unfold. Inside the Rayburn House office building, room 2141 was being prepared like a stage before the opening act. Staff members moved quietly but urgently, placing folders, adjusting microphones, checking every detail twice, not because they were told to, but because they felt they had to. The fluorescent lights above buzzed with that faint mechanical hum, cold, sterile, indifferent. And yet every flicker of light revealed something deeply human. The sweat collecting on a nervous clerk's brow, the tight grip of a junior aide clutching a stack of documents, the barely audible whisper between two producers behind a camera. Cameras whirred to life, one by one. Chairs creaked as they were tested and repositioned. Somewhere down the hallway, a printer jammed and hissed, breaking the stillness like a spark before a fire. This wasn't just another hearing. The silence had weight. Every small sound, a footstep, a cough, the rustling of paper cut through the tension like a blade. Washington had woken up tense. Room 2141 was no longer just a room. It had become a battlefield for truth. At the very center of room 2141, lit by harsh white lights and framed by mahogany wood panels, sat a single chair. It was plain, unremarkable, just leather and steel. And yet everyone's eyes were drawn to it, not because of how it looked, but because of what it meant. This was the witness chair, and today it would hold more than a man. It would hold the weight of decades of unanswered questions, of power abused, of truth silenced. The chair was empty, but not lifeless. It radiated tension like a piano string pulled too tight. To those who had watched generations of hearings, trials, and betrayals unfold on live television, this chair meant something more. It was a symbol of judgment, of justice, of consequences finally catching up. The older observers in the room, gray-haired reporters, retired attorneys, even veterans of civil rights protests, they stared at that chair like it was a sacred object. They had seen this story before, but never like this, never with this much at stake. The chair didn't move, it didn't speak, but it reminded everyone in the room of one truth: no one stays untouchable forever. And then the door opened. No music, no applause. Just the soft creak of hinges and the collective breath of 100 people being held all at once. Jasmine Crockett stepped into room 2141. No bodyguards, no entourage, just a slim leather portfolio clutched in one hand and eyes that had seen too much injustice to be impressed by theatrics. She didn't walk in like a politician. She walked in like a surgeon approaching the operating table, focused, steady, deadly in her calm. She wore a navy blazer, not flashy, but exact. Her hair was neatly pinned back, her steps measured to precision, as if every movement had been rehearsed 1,000 times in her head. Under her arm were 3 manila folders, each tab labeled in her own careful handwriting. To the untrained eye, they looked like ordinary documents, but to those who knew what was coming, they were loaded weapons. She didn't smile, she didn't wave, she simply moved toward her seat, the only seat in the room that wasn't afraid of the witness chair. People watched transfixed, because they knew this wasn't going to be a debate. This was going to be a dissection, and Jasmine Crockett was holding the scalpel. Then came the entrance he'd been planning his whole life. Donald J. Trump stepped through the chamber doors like a man arriving at his own coronation. He walked not with humility, but with habit. The habit of being watched, of being followed, of always commanding the room. His suit was tailored to perfection, dark and sharp. His tie, unmistakably red, knotted with mathematical precision. Every hair in place, every gesture rehearsed. And as he walked, he performed. He paused just long enough for the cameras to catch his profile. He adjusted his cufflinks with deliberate flair. And when he reached the committee staff, he extended his hand for a firm, lingering handshake, the kind designed not to greet, but to dominate. His eyes scanned the room like a spotlight, not looking for threats, but for attention. For a man who had turned reality into performance, this was just another episode. He took his seat like he owned it, leaning back, arms stretched, head slightly tilted like a king tolerating his court. What he didn't realize was this wasn't a rally. This wasn't a press event. This was a courtroom dressed in congressional carpet. And for the first time in decades, he wasn't the one asking the questions. For over 4 decades, Donald Trump had mastered one thing better than real estate, better than television, better than politics: distraction. When things got too close, he didn't run, he redirected. When the truth threatened him, he didn't fight it with facts, he buried it under noise. From the golden escalator to the Oval Office, his empire was built on smoke and mirrors, a carefully engineered illusion of strength, invincibility, and success. But behind the curtain was always the same trick. Control the narrative, and you control the consequences. He had lawyers on speed dial before most people had smartphones. He didn't hire legal teams, he hired legal armies. If one lawsuit threatened him, 10 more would be filed in retaliation. He flooded the zone, confused the press, called every investigation a witch hunt, and made millions believe that he was the victim, not the architect. He knew how to weaponize media. How to bury a federal subpoena under a viral tweet. How to turn a scandal into a distraction and a distraction into an opportunity. Every time the walls closed in, Trump found an escape hatch. Not because he was innocent, but because he was untouchable. Until now. Because what Jasmine Crockett brought with her that day wasn't a headline, it was evidence. And evidence doesn't bend to charisma. For years, Donald Trump had dodged accountability like it was a game. He out-talked reporters, out-funded prosecutors, out-shouted opponents. He turned lawsuits into headlines, trials into theater, and every accusation into a political weapon he could sell to his base. But this time it wasn't politics, it wasn't media, it wasn't spin, it was science. Forensic evidence doesn't care how many followers you have. DNA doesn't flinch under pressure. Phone records don't lean left or lean right. They just speak. In data, in numbers, in cold, irrefutable timelines. And for the first time in his life, Trump wasn't facing a reporter or a political rival. He was facing biology. He was facing digital trails. He was facing the kind of truth you can't intimidate because it doesn't blink. What Jasmine Crockett brought into that hearing wasn't opinion. It wasn't ideology. It was evidence that sat silently in folders glowing with certainty. He couldn't fire it. He couldn't tweet it away. He couldn't bury it under noise. Because this time, the witness was the truth itself. 8 months earlier, the room had been nearly empty. Just a handful of committee members, a bored cameraman, and a few interns tapping away on their phones. But Jasmine Crockett still stood, still spoke, still warned. Science doesn't lie, she said. Obstruction leaves a trail. No one flinched. No one leaned in. Most didn't even look up. Some smirked. Some rolled their eyes. Others dismissed her as theatrical, just another grandstanding moment from a freshman representative. But what they didn't see, what they refused to see, was the woman who wasn't speaking for applause. She wasn't performing. She was predicting, and she wasn't wrong. That day, Jasmine wasn't trying to go viral. She wasn't playing politics. She was doing what she had always done, spotting the smoke before anyone saw the fire. Because years in criminal defense had taught her one thing: obstruction always leaves fingerprints. You just have to know where to look. And Jasmine knew exactly where to look. While the headlines moved on, she didn't. While cable news panels laughed off her warning, she stayed behind in a quiet office on Capitol Hill, lights on long after midnight. No staff, no cameras, just coffee, highlighters, and determination. Jasmine Crockett pored over thousands of pages, phone logs, internal memos, encrypted chat records no one bothered to read. She traced timelines that others tried to blur. She highlighted gaps that others pretended weren't there. She cross-referenced travel itineraries, call durations, and timestamps from surveillance cameras, line by line, word by word, pattern by pattern. She wasn't guessing, she was building. Every detail mattered. Every missing minute meant something. There were nights she slept on her office couch, jacket folded as a pillow. Nights when her eyes burned from screen glare and her hands shook from too much caffeine and too little sleep. But still she kept going. Because the truth doesn't reveal itself. You have to chase it, hunt it, drag it into the light. And for 8 straight months, that's exactly what Jasmine did. Not for glory, not for headlines, but because someone had to. Jasmine Crockett didn't come from money. She didn't rise on name recognition or family legacy. She wasn't born into power. She fought her way to the table. Courtroom by courtroom, case by case, client by client. She learned to listen more than she spoke, to observe before accusing, to wait while the world ignored people like her. But now, she wasn't defending a forgotten man in a backroom courthouse. She was facing down one of the most powerful men in American history. And she didn't flinch. Because she wasn't here to perform, she was here to present. While others sought applause, Jasmine sought clarity. While they rehearsed zingers for the evening news, she rehearsed the timeline. No sound bites, no slogans, just facts, indexed, verified, and ready. Her goal wasn't to trend. Her goal was to expose. To prove that in a country tired of spin and spectacle, truth still has weight. And that when it's delivered with focus, with care, with courage, even the loudest lies fall silent. Jasmine didn't need a stage. She just needed a microphone and a file folder. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam the table. She didn't lean in. She simply looked up and asked the first question. Mr. Trump, on March 15th of last year, did you have any communication with your legal team regarding DNA evidence? Just like that. No drama, no build-up. Just a question sharp, specific, and surgical. Trump blinked. He wasn't expecting that. For decades, he'd walked into rooms and controlled them by being louder, bolder, faster. But this wasn't a rally. This wasn't a press gaggle. This was a cross-examination. And the woman in front of him didn't flinch. The room went silent. You could hear someone in the gallery stop breathing. Even the cameras seemed to freeze, because people realized this wasn't just a question. It was a test, a trap, a thread waiting to be pulled. And Jasmine Crockett had just tugged on it with precision only someone who already knew the answer could deliver. Trump smirked. He leaned into the microphone with that practiced ease, the kind he'd perfected over decades of dodging questions. "I talk to my legal team all the time," he said, almost casually. "We discuss all sorts of things. That's what good legal teams do. I have the best lawyers in the country." The words came out fast, smooth, polished, a classic Trump move: flood the zone with vagueness, wrap it in confidence, and hope no one notices he never answered the question. Jasmine didn't interrupt. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She just let his words hang in the air long enough for their emptiness to settle. Then, with calm precision, she opened her folder, selected a page, looked up, her voice steady, her tone even sharper than before. "Mr. Trump, my question was about March 15th, specifically about DNA evidence. Did you or did you not discuss challenging the chain of custody that day?" The room shifted. The tension sharpened. Reporters straightened in their seats, because now it was clear this wasn't a fishing expedition. This was a trap, and Trump had just stepped into it. Jasmine turned to page 7 in her folder. She held it up not for dramatic effect, but so the timestamp was visible to everyone in the room. March 15th, 8:42 p.m. to 9:53 p.m. a phone call between you, Mr. Trump, and Special Investigator Darren Lowell. 71 minutes. The night before, the forensic team collected DNA from the Mar-a-Lago guest wing. The words hit like cold steel. Trump shifted in his chair. His smile, once smug, began to falter just slightly. Jasmine continued. According to phone records subpoenaed in April, this call lasted 71 minutes and 18 seconds. And based on geolocation data, you were in the study. He was at his hotel in D.C. She paused just long enough for the silence to say the rest. Did you discuss the upcoming evidence sweep? Did you know they were going to test the curtains, the doorknobs, the champagne glass left in Suite 2B? Trump didn't answer, because he couldn't. This wasn't speculation. It wasn't political theater. It was forensic fact wrapped in timestamps, phone metadata, and GPS logs. And for the first time, the man who built his empire on bluster was being undone by math. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Instead, she reached into her folder, slow, deliberate, and removed a small black thumb drive. The room tensed. This wasn't on the schedule. She nodded to the technician. "Please play track 3, she said. Timestamp 49 minutes, 12 seconds. There was a hiss, the sound of a call recording starting. Then came the voice. His voice. "Make sure it never reaches the courtroom. I don't care how. Just handle it." 14 words. Not shouted, not whispered. Just said flat, commanding, transactional. And unmistakably Donald J. Trump. The AI verification software used by the FBI had confirmed the match 99.7% vocal identification confidence. The committee room froze. You could hear someone gasp in the gallery. A reporter dropped their pen. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't partisan spin. It was a command to obstruct justice. Jasmine leaned forward, not to attack, but to ask one simple question. "Mr. Trump, do you deny that this is your voice?" He didn't speak, because silence, for once, was the only thing left that couldn't incriminate him further. The silence after the recording ended was deafening. Trump sat still, too still. His fingers twitched. His right hand gripped the edge of the witness table. For a man who once commanded stadiums with a smirk and a slogan, this silence was unfamiliar terrain. He opened his mouth. "That recording, I mean, there's no context. People say things all the time." He stopped, swallowed hard, then tried again. I mean, I might have. Look, there's pressure, okay? There's always people. People misinterpret." But no one interrupted. Not the committee, not Jasmine, because they didn't have to. He was unraveling on his own. His eyes darted left-right, avoiding contact. His voice lost its rhythm. Even the cadence he once used to command rooms now sounded like a man trying to convince himself more than the audience. And the cameras caught it all. The sweaty brow, the shaking hands, the unraveling ego. For the first time, millions of Americans weren't seeing Trump the Teflon. They were watching Trump the terrified. And Jasmine, she just sat there silent. No gloating, no smile. Because when truth is winning, you don't need to shout. Every lie sounds louder when a microphone's on. And in room 2141, the lies were echoing like firecrackers in a cathedral. I never discussed DNA. Click. Sir, this is the March 15th call. We've matched the voice, and the words were, "We need to delay the DNA analysis." I wasn't even in Washington that week. Slide. Flight log, Trunk Force 1 landed DC at 2:14 p.m. March 13. That woman, she's not credible. Here's a signed NDA you offered her for $125,000. Each denial fell. Each excuse crumbled. Because this time it wasn't just Jasmine questioning him. It was the timeline, the receipts, the truth amplified, time-stamped, and unimpeachable. He had lived his life in a world where truth was optional, where lawyers rewrote facts and PR firms spun scandals into distractions. But forensic evidence doesn't play politics. Jasmine's voice stayed calm. Her tone never rose. Because she wasn't trying to win an argument, she was unveiling a reality. And as lie after lie collapsed under the weight of documentation, the audience at home, in the room across America, felt it. Justice wasn't just being served, it was being broadcast. There are moments in history where time seems to stop. And in room 2141, it took only 5 words. Jasmine leaned forward, calm, measured eyes, unblinking. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She just looked at Trump not as a former president, but as a man trapped by his own fiction. Truth has DNA. Lies don't. The room froze. Even the air conditioners seemed to pause. A cameraman forgot to blink. Reporters stopped typing. Because those 5 words cut through every headline, every spin, every excuse. No more slogans. No more noise. Just science. Just truth. And from that moment, the phrase wasn't just Jasmine's, it was on t-shirts, it was trending on Twitter. It was carved into the walls of protest signs outside Capitol Hill. For every person who had been told their truth didn't matter, for every survivor dismissed, every whistleblower mocked, those 5 words felt like a rallying cry. Truth has DNA. Lies don't. And Trump, he didn't reply. Because there's no comeback when the truth is louder than you. It started with a single clip. Just 71 seconds of footage, Jasmine Crockett leaning in, 5 words escaping her lips, Trump blinking in silence. Truth has DNA. Lies don't. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Facebook, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, TikTok, Reddit, even the morning church programs in Alabama paused to talk about it. Talk show hosts paused. Legal experts broke it down frame by frame. Networks replayed the hearing 72 hours straight. No commercials, no commentary, just raw truth on loop. Elderly veterans watched and whispered, "I haven't seen anything like this since Watergate." Grandmothers texted their grandkids, "Turn on the news. This is history." What made this moment unforgettable wasn't just the evidence. It was how America saw it unfold in real time. No edits, no filters, just a nation watching power get pierced by precision. They saw Trump sweat. They saw him blink, stall, reach for a glass of water, and miss. They saw Jasmine calm, unreadable, focused, a woman who had carried truth not in slogans, but in manila folders, time-stamped records, and her unshakable voice. And as the hours became days, and days turned into digital immortality, America didn't just remember, it reawakened. In a country exhausted by headlines, this moment wasn't just another headline. It was a crack in the wall built by decades of money, media, and manipulation. And for once, the crack came from the inside. Not from riots, not from scandals, but from a courtroom voice, calm and relentless. This wasn't just a moment against Trump. It was a moment for justice. For every whistleblower ignored. For every community left behind. For every veteran teacher, nurse who once believed in a system and then watched it let them down. This was a reminder the system could still fight for them. For the first time in years, people saw justice not as a myth or a theory, but as a woman with a folder asking precise questions and refusing to blink in front of power. It mattered because it restored belief. Belief that corruption is not eternal, that truth does not stay buried forever, that silence can be broken, and that even the most powerful man in America can be brought to the witness table by one woman who refused to forget. The courtroom went silent, but America did not. What happened in room 2141 didn't stay there. It echoed out through city streets, kitchen tables, veterans halls, and Sunday sermons. At a diner in Georgia, 2 retirees watched the clip again and again. At a high school in Michigan, a teacher paused her civics class and said, "This is how democracy holds the line." In rural Texas, a church bulletin quoted Jasmine Crockett's words. In Harlem, barbershops played the hearing on loop, each pause in Trump's voice met with a louder voice from the people. Truth has DNA, lies don't. She did what no one else could. It was no longer just about Trump. It was about the idea that someone finally had stood firm, calm, prepared, relentless, and not just for herself, but for the people watching, people who had waited too long to see someone like them rise without flinching. This was no longer a courtroom story. This became America's story. She didn't shout. She didn't grandstand. She didn't need a slogan or a stage or a crowd. All Jasmine Crockett brought was proof, 3 folders, a timeline, and a voice sharpened by a lifetime of being underestimated. She wasn't famous, she wasn't protected, but she knew that truth doesn't need fame, just focus. She wasn't fighting just for justice. She was fighting to remind America what justice even looks like. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a black woman with receipts who stared down a billionaire and didn't blink. Because sometimes all it takes to change a nation is one voice with evidence. In the end, it wasn't about Trump. It wasn't even about DNA courtrooms or headlines. It was about a country staring at its reflection and asking the hardest question of all. Will we keep choosing spectacle over substance? Noise over truth? Theaters over justice? Because truth doesn't come with applause. It doesn't trend. It doesn't sell ad space. Truth comes quietly, in late nights, in file folders, in one woman refusing to be silenced. Jasmine Crockett didn't just expose a man, she exposed a system and reminded us that justice is not a spectator sport. It takes work, it takes risk, it takes us. So now the question isn't, will Trump be held accountable? The real question is, will we? Justice doesn't arrive in grand speeches. It arrives in quiet preparation. This story reminded us it only takes one person armed with the truth to challenge an entire system built on lies, and that person doesn't need to be rich or powerful. They just need to be brave and ready. In a world full of noise, remember, silence is not peace, and truth, even when whispered, has the power to shake a nation. If this story moved you, if you believe in truth over theatrics, in courage over corruption, then don't just watch, stand with us. Subscribe to AZ Exposed so we can keep bringing justice to light one story at a time. Because silence protects the powerful, but your voice helps protect the truth. Subscribe now. Let the truth be louder than ever.